Hello world. Lee here from Ruby Gold. We're going to cover an exercise on the Exercism Ruby track in this video. We're going to be continuing. I think if you're watching these in the series, we are nearing the end of learning exercises, but I think this one is still a learning exercise. So let's keep things brief here and get ourselves moved over to the exercise here. So got Exercism pulled up. The next one is the port of Palermo. Mine says in progress. I had hit the button and already started it. So it's recognized as being in progress, but there's nothing in there. I had run the tests. That was about it. But I've been exposed. I opened the exercise beforehand this time. So we can see that there's a number of exercises still locked in the Ruby track, but many of them are open at this point. And yeah, I guess these little light bulbs indicate learning exercises versus any of the other non-learning exercises. So let's hop over to this visual syllabus to see where this is. So it's all the way down here. So it looks like we have to have at least unlocked the first thing in conditionals. And this will unlock ranges. So we've still only tackled like the first exercise in many of these. So we have a long way to go. Symbols only has one, and that is the port of Palermo. So here we have it. You can read up. I do recommend. So in these videos, I don't usually read through these. I do recommend that on your own you read through them, especially if you are that beginner who I'm making these videos specifically for, to get sort of some background on the concepts. They're pretty good backgrounds and they're useful. So let's jump over to the editor. So we can see I ran the tests, right? So typically we start one of these videos with a blank slate. We sort of get like, just take a kind of a glance at what's going on here. We can see that in this case, we actually have a module instead of a class. So we're working with something a little bit different here. And we can sort of see that there's like 3 different areas that we'll probably have to write some code to pass our tests, right? So we've got something up here. It wants us to define a constant. And then we've got 2 methods on the module, which probably have a couple of tests for this one and a couple of tests for this one. And that's what we have. So I would hit the run the test button. I got to change something. Let me just, I don't know, add a blank line, run the test. This is sort of our initial check, just to make sure everything, is what we expect. Everything's looking the way we expect it to look. Everything's running correctly. This is like just making sure that we've got the project set up and running in our local dev environment, right? We run the tests, make sure we can run the tests, that there's no failures at that point, and it's good. That means we are good to go. This is like seeing all 8 tests failed is actually a good thing. It means we're ready to go. It means this exercise is failing as intended. And if we sort of look at these, we can sort of piece together a little bit of what we'll be working on here. So the first one is identifier. So essentially that when we call port identifier, it returns pale as a symbol. And then we've got 3 that look like they're for cities. And so that probably means 3 of these for get identifier city, going to return something, right? So looks like probably a 4-digit code. Yeah, so the first 4 characters, all caps as a symbol. So we can really start piecing together what this exercise is for. And it looks like we probably have 4 other tests for get terminal. And so what that probably is depending on the ship identifier, so these ships are specifically designed to carry certain substances or materials or collections. Let me close some of these. right? So oil and gas, probably specific ships designed for those. Big tankers, cars. There are, I believe, car-specific ships out there designed to stack many cars in below deck and make driving them on and off very easy at the terminal. Who does that work? Is that longshoremen or something? Not really sure. But yeah, to drive them on and off easily. So those, and then clothes, probably just sort of maybe like a mixed dry goods, not maybe a container ship, maybe. But yeah, so it looks like we'll be passing in a ship identifier and getting back a port. What do we have, A or B? So yeah, probably because storage facilities, transportation hubs is what we have going on there. So yeah, so we're good. We took out our extra space, ran the tests. They still run fine. Everything's hunky-dory. So let's proceed with this first one. So we just need an identifier. Whoops. A couple of typos there. Yes, I put in all these videos my disclaimer that I'm switching keyboard layouts. I'm getting a lot better, so probably fewer typos, and I'll probably stop commenting on it in future videos. I'm at the final step. I'm on the keyboard layout I'll probably be using, at least as far as the letters and numbers go. So pretty much at this point, I'm just remapping my muscle memory to the new layout. Yeah, so this seems too easy here. We want to, so the port is pale. I'm not really sure what that would stand for. Port authority of, oh, Palermo. Yeah. That's right in the name. Yeah. Okay, so the port of Palermo. Okay, so that's what pale means, right? Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, that makes sense. So we expect, because this code is specifically, we're designing a piece of software for the port of Palermo to, I guess, run their port. Busy harbor with a lot of ships coming and going. They need a manual system for keeping track of ships currently in the harbor. Yeah, okay. Well, that's our one little change here. Let's see if that's what we need to satisfy the first test. Yay, and that's exactly what we did. So we satisfied the first test, which means we can move on and start with these next grouping here. So we're doing the cities. If we pass in a city name, we get an identifier back, is what it looks like. Right, and so just, as a comment, like I try to do these as much as I can just from reading the tests. In the real world, hopefully you have some degree of domain knowledge of what it is you're building. So you might already know that without needing to read the tests, right? Because you're probably the one writing the tests. Unless you are a large organization that splits QA off into a separate group. But probably you're in a smaller team if you're working in a Ruby shop, and you're probably writing your own tests. So you probably already know, and you probably know to write this test that you're going to get this four character response back. So the first thing that we want to do is, right now we're getting a runtime error, right? We're raising, please implement this method. So the first thing that we do typically here at Ruby Gold is we just make the smallest change possible. So we delete that and run the test again. Just make sure we're getting a different error message. And yeah, so here it looks like, we returned nil, which is consistent. There's nothing there, so we just return nil. So probably the next thing that we can do is, and this is obviously clearly not the solution, but just kind of one more, let's make sure everything's good. Yeah, we return that. So city, and we know it needs to be a symbol. So like before anything else, let's use our toSim method and see if we can just return Hamburg as a symbol at a minimum. Yep, Cool, 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 cool. So now the thing I'm wondering about is the order of operations here, right? I know I'm going to probably just chain some methods together. So I probably will just do, I'm inclined to do toSymbol last, but let's go against my inclination here and see. Okay, so yeah, symbols, unlike strings, don't actually have an uppercase method, which I'm telling you because I'm reading it right here in the error message. It's one of those pieces of information that honestly, like, I don't keep in my mind because frankly, I don't need to store like every rule and every bit of syntax. It's one of those things I can look up or rely on a test to tell me. Now, possibly I've been in this situation before, and that's why I was inclined to put uppercase first. Maybe I've run into this before. Maybe there's something else going in the back of my head about like, let's change types after we've changed everything else. I'm not really sure, but we can see that in this scenario, because there is no uppercase method for a symbol, we have to put that there. Now, the other alternative of what this error message may be telling us is that maybe uppercase is wrong and is not a method. Like maybe strings don't have this method either, but I think they do. Let's just run this. And, oh, okay. So uppercase is not in fact a method, and probably it's just me being silly and typing my Ruby methods incorrectly. It's not uppercase, it's upcase. So that begs the question, right? Because we're curious folks here. Can we string that on the end? Do symbols have an upcase method? And in fact, they do. So this really comes down to then a decision. Do we consider the fact that we want to return a symbol kind of our most important thing here? Or do we want to coerce to a symbol last? And I don't know that I have a great argument justified by reason, but I'm solving this exercise and I do in fact want to do it in this order here. I'd rather work on the string first and coerce it into a symbol last. And now that's one of those things, like I'm making a mental note, and outside of this video, I want to look into that and see if there is sort of a great answer. Oh, interesting. I didn't even notice 2 of these pass because Rome is already 4 characters and Kiel is 4 characters. So those are satisfied with literally nothing further. So all that we actually have left to do at this point is cut down our city name to 4 characters. So there's a variety of ways to do that because it's a string. I think I can just grab the first through the 4th like that. Oh, I got hit by a 0 index problem, right? I got ambu. And I got, what did I get here? Ohm. So yeah. We have to go from the 0th through the 3rd, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. Alternatively, right? I'll show you that. I'll run it that way. Alternatively, in our test pass, we could do exclusive. So 0 through 4th. Let's see if that passes. And that passes all the same. So it kind of is just like what you're concerned with. Normally, I think I would go with the inclusive 0, ... 3, right? So 2 dots is inclusive. 0 and the 3rd are included in there. I think in this scenario, I'm actually going to do it differently. So embedded in this code is the idea of using a 4-digit identifier. And so we expect to return something that's not digit, 4 characters. We expect to return something that's 4 characters long. So I think for that reason, I want the number 4, the integer of 4, I want this to actually be here and like visible. It's not maybe going to actually convey any extra information, but in some sense it could. So we're saying 4 characters. Right? So we're saying stop before the 4th, right? So a string. A string is like an array of characters, which is what's going on here. So we're using these accessor, this array thing, and carving out the 0th indexed one, right? So in the example of Hamburg, right, the H A M B. So H is 0, A is 1, right, and so on. And we're saying grab 4 of them, but don't include. It's kind of like we're saying grab 4, but don't include that 4th one, which would be the U, right? So it's technically the 5th index. So what am I trying to, let me show them side by side, right? Or one above the other, right? So the difference here, they function the same. And normally I would do this, but because we're hard coding this at 4, I feel like there's something slightly more indicated by that. Even though we're not actually using the 4th index, we're using 0th index, 1st index, 2nd index, and 3rd index. I just feel like there's something a little bit more. So we're going to stick with that for now. Yeah, tests are passing. So you may be looking at this and saying, well, what happens if there are more characters, right? Or what if there are not enough characters, right? What if there's a city that's 3 characters long or 2 characters long? Let's run the tests, including one extra thing here, and see what happens. So the return values are just going to return the full thing, and that seems to satisfy the test just fine. So yeah, we could get in a sticky situation, but probably the rules don't require. So we're probably not passing this piece of information to another system that's going to say, oh, your identifier is too short, right? That's the edge case that I'm thinking about here. What happens if the city is only 3 characters? Probably the rules are, I don't know if there's anything in the instructions here. Doesn't look like it specifies. Oh, they say, yes, yeah, slice. And slice is probably what's used up here. Does this use slicing? No, it doesn't do any slicing. Right, so slice is another way to do this. This is basically just a shorthand. Well, not really, because it's return these elements of the array. Right. I'm not going to show you that. I'm sure you can figure it out. You can look at, once you solve this, if you really haven't tried it with the slice and you really don't know how slice works, you can still look at community solutions. Or I recommend, pause the video for a moment and just implement this with slice instead if you're following along. And yeah, so the next thing we've got here, so we're actually in that scenario where we're passing. I don't know if I finished my thought. What I was saying is probably if we return a 3-character symbol in this method, anywhere that we're using it, we'll probably accept that just fine. The point is probably that we don't want it to be longer than 4 characters, and that's kind of the key there. But let's move on to the next one. And yeah, so we're getting our runtime error. Let's just make sure. Test 5 still fails, and we're returning nil. So all good there. And probably all of these now. Yeah, so we can guarantee that these are also testing the same method. No surprise there. So we're passing in a ship identifier, and it looks like what we're trying to do, oil and gas go to A. We're going to probably save ourselves from a headache by looking over here and just reading the quick instructions that say oil and gas go to A, everything else goes to B. Okay. Yeah. So we could do an if here. We could do something else. We could do a case. I'm going to go with a case because right now oil and gas go to terminal A, everything else goes to terminal B. But if we did this with like an if else statement, and then we have to, let's say that Palermo builds a terminal C, or maybe right now we're just building a small portion of the software and there is a terminal C, then we're going to have a problem with that if statement, right? It's going to be like an if else if, and we want to avoid that as much as we can. So in this case, pun partially intended, yeah, so if I can ever remember how to write a case statement in Ruby, I need autocomplete to do it for me. So what is it? So this isn't exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take ship identifier and like, what do we get here? So it looks like the first 3 are characters. And then, yeah, they're all 6 long. So the first 3 are characters, and well, so the first 3 are characters. We need to transform it, kind of. So what do we want to say? Oil, gas, return A. Is it what is it, default? No. Is it just else? Oops, that's not right. So this is definitely going to fail for any number of reasons. I may have even written my oh yeah, I think like the indentation on case does not work the way you expect it to work. So we passed cars and gas because, and that's actually, or cars and clothes, because essentially if you look at the results here, we just ended up returning B in all cases. So essentially we're hitting our else here, right? And that's because we haven't completed what to do with ship identifier. So ship identifier is a symbol, right? So we can't do, we can't just take the first three of these, right? That's going to explode probably. It did not explode. I'm just kind of curious. So if we look at this, what does that actually return? Interesting. These are all caps. So probably can we just get away with that? Well, look at that. I thought we were going to have to do some additional transformation here. But apparently taking the group from a string ends up just returning a string. Is that really a string? No, what do we got here? Dot. Kinda. Is it typo? I can never remember these methods. I know there's like a method. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. If I just read the message, I can read this error message and get the same thing that I was looking for. So undefined method type of for an instance of string. And similarly, it would say the same thing. So yeah, it is a string. So doing this makes it a string. There's no do I want is that what I'm looking to do? Yeah, I could have just, yeah, right, dot class, duh. Silly. I was trying to overcomplicate that. Yeah, so that's a string, but that is a symbol. So what we learned here is that using this does a forced coercion. And so we're getting, once we do this, the thing we're getting is a string. So now we're comparing a string to a string. And yeah, so again, the premise here of doing a case statement, which, sure, if we did it as an if statement, it would probably be shorter. If something, return, else, return, and so it'd be one line shorter. But the problem is, like, when, you know, you've got, when, I don't know, clothes are going, yeah, I can do this, you know, C, right? So like when clothes are going to C, when OJ orange juice is going to a mixing facility, you know, terminal C. Like once we've got more terminals to handle different ship types, you're going to probably appreciate this a lot more than trying to figure out the nesting of an if. even just the multiple conditions of an if-else. This is pretty much a better solution. I think most people would agree. And we can talk about that in another video as to why. But yeah, it looks like we are done here. So we'll just quick submit this. I don't expect that there's going to be any automated feedback. No automated feedback. So let's just take a quick peek at community solutions and see if there's any, see if there are any others. Yeah, so we'll look at community solutions. We'll just take a quick peek at some. So here, it looks like this person did it the way I was intending, or the way that I probably would have done that normally with the inclusive, but I just like the little bit of added information from the exclusive way using the for. And here they did trim it down. So unnecessarily, they called 2s, which we saw is actually not necessary. Unless there's like some edge case that I don't know that will cause your code to blow up. But I think for now, I think that the way we did it is fine. And then they use a ternary operator here. So if material equals oil or material equals gas, then return A, else B. So that's a nice enough way to do it. I mean, it certainly saved them some lines of code. And if you could predict that this will never change, like Palermo will never have another terminal, then yeah, it's probably fine. But this is not going to scale. If you have to add a case, you're going to have to rewrite that entirely. So it's perfectly fine in the context of this problem, but I always like to try and think through, like, what is the real world if this was an actual project? What other concerns would we have? So here they did a similar thing, but they created an array of oil and gas to see if that includes the ship. So it's sort of the opposite. Instead of checking if the ship identifier includes oil and gas, they're checking if oil and gas includes the ship identifier and that unnecessary two-string conversion. The rest of it's the same. It's still ternary operator. So this is actually interesting. So instead of saying, what's the ship? Let me look up in the list where that goes. They're saying, it's like as if terminal A was like, give me the ship name and I'll see if it's in my logs, as you know, like kind of a thing, which probably is a worse solution. Maybe not. I mean, if the ship type kind of like probably indicates what it's carrying, right? A tanker versus a cargo ship versus a automobile transport versus a cold storage versus a OJ tank, you know, whatever. Orange juice might be in the same tanker, but a lot of the times concentrate gets mixed at the port, from what I understand. Maybe it's only some ports. Let's look at maybe one or two more of these. Yeah, so here they went with the if statement. And this is, so don't do this as like my general rule. So this is a code smell kind of. I see why they did it, but declaring a single use variable is like, for me, it's a big no-no. If you're going to declare a variable and only use it one other time, yeah, technically it's used twice here, but it's not. It's used once in the line. Like, to me, that's just a no-no. It's unnecessary. It clogs, you know, it clogs the code. It creates another variable that, like, you're not going to have memory problems from doing it once, but potentially if you do it everywhere, you could, like, the Ruby parser, you know, has to go through and like figure out what all the variables are that it's going to be creating. So you could probably get into memory concerns down the road. Probably you have to be working on some big scale apps to get there, but regardless, it's a whole unnecessary line of code to create a variable and then use it and never need to see it again. Just use the code, like just use that right in line here. Yeah, it would be a longer line to do it twice, but you also shouldn't be, in my opinion, using an if statement for this. So that's fine. I mean, for this exercise, it's fine. You're learning. You're watching these videos because you're learning. And these people solving these are learning probably or practicing. So, and there's not, if it passes the test, it's not technically a bad answer. It just might not be optimal, right? And, that's the kind of feedback that probably you'll get from someone doing code review for you. Yeah, so this looks practically almost identical to that previous one, except that this person used slice. Wait, what did they use? Did they use the? Yeah, so they interesting. They used a comma instead of. Huh. I don't know that I've ever used that. Right. So in slice, yeah, you'll use a comma, right? Because it's 0 through index. I guess exclusive. But also I prefer using it without the slice. But it's fine. Maybe there's a performance argument for that. Otherwise, it looks like kind of the same thing. Cool. I kind of want to see, like, maybe there's like one more that's just distinct. Like, did someone do it in like a vastly different way? What are we sorting by? If we sort by, yeah, I don't know. Let's go to like page, not all the way. Let's just go to page 3 and see if we can find someone. They're probably like this person has, they're using pattern matching, well, regular expressions here. So that's a little bit different, but like you can see that, like, even though the syntax on each line is maybe a little bit different, it's still the same basic implementation, right? They're still using a ternary operator. So it's not terrible. I actually don't really, I kind of like it. It's not too bad. And that, does give you more opportunity. Let's say like something else is going to that port. It's actually probably the easiest way to add additional options, but it doesn't allow for other port or the other terminals. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of variance. Maybe if we go all the way to the end here. Here's one last one. So using guard clauses to return this and that. So I'm a big fan of guard clauses, but I don't really like it in this case. And also the explicit versus implicit return here. You don't need to say return. You could just be. But also it doesn't really. So guard clauses are often a way to write code in a way that doesn't use complicated if else chains of trees and whatnot. Nested ifs, oh, terrible. But they shouldn't be used in a case manner, really. Like, a guard clause is an early return. It's like, essentially, it's kind of like saying this method, we probably shouldn't be proceeding further in this method. So I'm not a big fan of using it here, but we got to see at least a different way to do this. So I'm pretty happy with our solution. I didn't see anything, I don't think. I did not really see anything in the other solutions that make me want to change mine. For if this were to be just a submitted exercise in a classroom, probably I would prefer the ternary operator here instead of our case. But thinking about like being practiced for the real world, I feel like there's going to be another terminal. You're going to have to add an option. I just feel like that code is going to expand. So set yourself up so that in the future you can very easily modify that code. Yeah, and that's why I'm going to stick with that. I'm pretty happy with this solution. Yeah, I'll mark it as complete. Let me know in the comments to this video if you're watching on YouTube, if you learned anything, if you disagree with any of my preferences, if you have a clever solution that I didn't look at and you want me to take a look at it, I'd love to review other solutions and I'd be happy to give you feedback. Cool. I think, is that the point at which now it's published? Now we can see, yes. So now we can see my solution. And somewhere I can dig through here to find out if other people submitted my exact solution or not. It might be just like a character difference, right? The city 0 through 4 versus 0 through 3 thing. But I'm really curious if anyone else used my solution. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you want some feedback on a solution to this. I'd be happy to take a look. Or if you're still struggling, let me know that as well. But I think I think ultimately this is an easier exercise. I don't know that it really showcased strings all that well. I'm sorry, symbols all that well, but it is what it is. So yeah, we'll catch up soon in another video solving another exercism exercise. We've got quite a way to go still on the Ruby track. We're we barely scratched the surface, so we've got a while to go. A lot of videos in our future. I hope you're enjoying these. I really appreciate you watching these. Give the video a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching here on Exercism, I don't know if there's any way to give feedback, but I just appreciate you taking a look. Maybe search this up on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and give me some feedback in this video comments to let me know you're watching on Exercism. I'd be curious to know who's finding these through Exercism. I think most of you are finding them directly on YouTube. However you're finding them, I'm happy you're watching. Thanks for watching. And remember, there's gold in them there rubies.